Translator, Dark Angel, Editor, Kurisu. Yet another 3 hours slipped by. Lord Gongyang, what should we do? Someone asked. Gongyang Taisun for direction. What do you mean? What should we do? Certification as a heaven-grade alchemist may last 3 days and 3 nights. Only 6 hours have gone by, and you're already asking me what we are to do? Could it be you think I will step out to stop him? Gongyang Taisun snorted. That person gave an awkward smile as he thought, doesn't everyone already know that Ling Han has already failed? So what is the point of continuing to waste everyone's feelings? Let's go. Let's go. There's nothing much to see here. That's right. Let's all just go back, embrace our wives, and sleep. You speak as if you actually have a wife. Pei, believe it or not, I'll embrace your wife and sleep. The crowd scattered swiftly, leaving only a few servants waiting outside. A pampered young master like Tang Zuming was naturally lacking in patience. Otherwise, with a great-grandfather who was a heaven-grade alchemist, he might have already advanced into earth-grade by now. He yawned and said, Gaofeng, stand guard here. I'm going back to sleep. Watch closely. Do not allow this brat to slip away. The moment 3 days have passed, I want to personally kill him. Yes, young master. Zhuo Gaofeng answered respectfully. Tang Zuming again let out a nasty chuckle toward Zhu Xuaner's direction. He was certain this beauty would very soon yield to his will and obediently undress herself before pleasing him on the bed. He could not help shuddering with anticipation, feeling a trace of impatience. In truth, he very much wanted to force himself upon her right this very instant. There was no need to hurry. This beautiful creature was fated to be served up on his plate. For spiritual pedestal tier cultivators, so long as they had not engaged in a fierce battle, it was no problem to endure a wait that could last over 10 days and even up to half a month. Thus, Zhu Xuaner and Zhuo Gaofeng both kept watch outside the alchemy chamber. Besides the two of them, Elder Shi and Gongyang Taisun were also present, and together with a number of earth-grade alchemists, there were about 10 people still waiting in total. 1 day went by, then 2 days went by, and Ling Han was still endlessly mired in the process of concocting pills. Moreover, more and more people once again returned to the alchemy chamber. Ling Han seemed not to have failed yet. They could plainly see that as Ling Han concocted the alchemical pills, he drew out multiple patterns from the alchemy furnace, and after making slight adjustments, fired them back onto the furnace. Those were the patterns belonging to the various ingredients within the alchemy furnace, and they carried the essence of nature that formed natural patterns. Pill concoction meant merging these various patterns in a specific manner and, in the end, producing a shocking effect from them. However, this manipulation of the patterns belonging to the ingredients would only be used during the concoction of a heaven-grade alchemical pill. When they saw how these patterns fluttered, and also Ling Han's practiced beautiful movements, every alchemist felt their hair rise in extreme shock. This youngster was truly concocting a heaven-grade alchemical pill. Crap. Furthermore, even after 2 whole days, the furnace had not yet exploded. Instead, the divinity and essence of the ingredients were being slowly extracted, revealing the most intrinsic patterns. This proved that Ling Han was still advancing smoothly and successfully up to this point. This was truly far too astonishing. Could it be that he would really succeed? None of them could say for sure. In alchemy, the last part was the hardest to complete. Until the very final moment, no one could be certain of success. If there was an error at any single stage, it could lead to a fatal failure. Moreover, the manipulation of patterns to ensure that the ingredients could interact and resonate with one another was the hardest step of this lengthy process. One misstep and the entire endeavor would be lost. Yet in Ling Han's case, by this point he was exceedingly relaxed. He was the Alchemy Emperor. What realm had he reached in his previous life? Saint grade. He had even concocted pseudo-immortal grade alchemical pills, so it would not be an exaggeration to call him a pseudo-immortal grade alchemist. The only thing he lacked was the ability to raise his flames to the maximum heat level. And aside from that, there was naturally nothing left for him to fear. He moved with assured ease, his 10 fingers moving as though he were plucking the strings of a chin one. So unhurried and flowing were his motions. One pattern after another emerged. He adjusted each and every one before tossing them back into the alchemy furnace. These patterns corresponded to the changes in the medicinal effects of the contents within the furnace, and under his adjustments, they fused together and headed toward the direction he intended. At times, Ling Han would even close his eyes, as though he had once more returned to his previous life. Heaven-grade alchemical pills were as easy as eating cake, and saint-grade alchemical pills were no great matter either. Given the level of alchemy Ling Han had mastered in his previous life, if he were provided true immortal-grade alchemical pills, he might even be able to concoct immortal-grade alchemical pills. Hey, did I see wrongly? Why do I feel like I saw him close his eyes just now? Yay, I saw that too! Is this guy a freak or something? He can actually be so inattentive even in the midst of concocting a heaven-grade alchemical pill? The spectators erupted into a stunned clamor. They had truly been shocked by Ling Han's actions. Ling Han's movements grew ever more skillful. Every step was something he knew like the back of his hand. His fingers seemed to carry their own spirit, as they easily twisted the unique nature of each ingredient, moving in a manner that was relaxed and even pleasurable. As the 3-day limit drew near, more and more patterns steamed out of the alchemy furnace. With just one glance, the faces of the Earth-grade alchemists turned green, yet Ling Han was utterly unconcerned. The movements of his hands accelerated accordingly, orderly and astonishingly calm. Tang Zuming had returned once more, and seeing this scene, he could not help but darken his expression. Even if Ling Han failed at the next step, this kind of standard was truly close to heaven grade. An 18-year-old quasi-heaven grade alchemist. That was too horrifying. At last, Ling Han forced every single pattern back into the alchemy furnace, and no others emerged. The time was also close to the end of the 3-day process. Hong, in what had been clear skies, a dark cloud suddenly appeared. There had been absolutely no warning, and within that cloud, lightning flashed tightly together, making a loud crackling sound. It's said that when a heaven-grade alchemical pill has been successfully concocted, a thunder tribulation will descend upon it to prevent it from leaving the alchemy furnace. This means Ling Han has truly concocted heaven-grade alchemical pills? Otherwise, how could he have drawn out a calamity of thunder? However, this is also the very hardest step. If the alchemical pills concocted are not up to standard, then they will be turned to ash by this thunder tribulation. But if they are up to standard, they will absorb the power of Heaven's Dao within it and truly come to possess heaven-grade effects. If a deity transformation tier cultivator swallowed a heaven-grade alchemical pill, even he would explode and die. There would be no way he could withstand the power of Heaven's Dao. But will we be affected by the thunder tribulation too? All their expressions sank a little. None of them had ever experienced such a thing. They had not even witnessed one in truth, only heard of it through hearsay. Retreat! Retreat! Gangyang Tai Sun's expression changed drastically. As an Earth-grade mid-level alchemist, he naturally knew that the moment a heaven-grade alchemical pill left the alchemy furnace, it would draw forth a thunder tribulation. That was not something to treat lightly. All of them fled hurriedly in all directions. By now, everyone was certain that Ling Han was indeed concocting heaven-grade alchemical pills. Otherwise, there was no way he could have drawn out a thunder tribulation, and so long as the alchemical pill endured it, Ling Han would be a true heaven-grade alchemist. Even if it failed to withstand the might of thunder, he was still qualified to be called a quasi-heaven-grade alchemist. Elder Shi and Zhuo Gaofeng's faces turned slightly green, though one of them was at the spiritual infant tier, and the other at the flower blossom tier. If they truly stood against a heaven-grade alchemist, in an instant, others could tear them apart into pieces so small that not even bones would remain. There were countless people who would beg a heaven-grade alchemist to concoct alchemical pills for them, and there was no shortage of ultimate elites such as those of the heaven tier and the deity transformation tier. Before such true elites, what could a spiritual infant tier amount to? Even if there were restrictions in place, and deity transformation tier cultivators would be greatly weakened if they came here, so long as Ling Han called out, it was guaranteed that all the spiritual infant tier cultivators in the entire North region would obey him. He did not need to be a heaven-grade alchemist. Being a quasi-heaven-grade alchemist was enough. That was because spiritual infant-tier cultivators had no need of heaven-grade alchemical pills anyway, as earth-grade alchemical pills would more than suffice. Chapter 456, Heaven-grade alchemist Ling Han. Translator, Dark Angel. Editor, Kurisu Tangzu Ming could feel his facial muscles twitching madly as well. He knew that even if Ling Han failed, there would definitely be no one who dared lay a hand on a quasi-heaven-grade alchemist. Even if his great-grandfather were here, he too would think highly of Ling Han, an 18-year-old quasi-heaven-grade alchemist. Was he still far off from becoming a true heaven-grade alchemist? Why was there such a monstrous talent in this world? How was anyone else supposed to live when he set such a lofty standard? Only Zhu Xuaner's beautiful eyes shone brightly. She knew that Ling Han possessed extraordinary talent in alchemy, yet she had never imagined he would truly be able to become a heaven-grade alchemist. This was an immense, pleasant shock for her. Peng. Ling Han simply lifted the alchemy furnace and walked out. With a sweep of his gaze, he found an empty public square and hurriedly raced there. Everyone knew he intended to have the alchemical pills endure the calamity of thunder there, and thus they gathered around and planted themselves firmly to watch. Ling Han arrived at his destination. His right hand suddenly flipped open the lid of the alchemy furnace, and 3 jade-green pills immediately shot out from within and fled in different directions, as if they possessed lives of their own. But it was precisely at this moment that the thunder tribulation descended, without the slightest prior warning. Kuang! 3 bolts of lightning struck down at the same time. They hit the 3 alchemical pills, and pa! 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 All 3 pills instantly dropped from midair. Ling Han moved swiftly and caught each of them. However, one had been directly turned into ash, and only 2 fell into his hands. This was the most ordinary return origin pill, and thus it had attracted the most ordinary kind of thunder tribulation. 1 strike, and it was over. When Ling Han had concocted pseudo-immortal grade alchemical pills in his last life, he had actually drawn out a 9-colored divine lightning that almost spread to him even. When he recalled it even now, he could still feel his heart quicken and his complexion turn ashen pale in terror. He clenched the 2 return origin pills in his hands and raised them high. The alchemical pills had not been reduced to ash. He had succeeded. Gods, an 18-year-old heaven-grade alchemist. Though no one knew what kind of alchemical pill Ling Han had concocted, it was enough for them to know that these 2 pills were heaven-grade alchemical pills. Respectful greetings, Grandmaster Ling. All the alchemists knelt. Even Gongyang Taisun was no exception, a fire flickering within his eyes. Gods, at last, a heaven-grade alchemist had emerged from the North region. Moreover, it was a record-breaking 18-year-old youth. Who could compare to such an achievement at any time in history? Even that Ling Han, who had been acclaimed as the Alchemy Emperor 10,000 years ago, would have to admit defeat in the face of such an outstanding feat. How strange. 2 geniuses of alchemy from 2 different generations were actually both named Ling Han. What an astonishing coincidence! Elder Shi knelt. Zhuo Gaofeng hesitated slightly before he, too, knelt. Only Tang Zuming was trembling in fear. Gods, he had actually ordered someone to hunt down and kill a heaven-grade alchemist. Even if his great-grandfather were here, there would be no way to save him. He was done for. He was finished. He was so frightened that his knees were shaking. He wanted to flee back to the Middle State, hide within the Tang residence, and never step out again. Yet it was as if his feet weighed 10,000 pounds. He could not take a single step at all. Ling Han casually stored away the 2 return origin pills. He would not be able to sell them at all in the North region. He would have to wait until he went to the other 3 regions, or the Middle State, and see. He strode toward Tang Zuming, frightening him so much that he shivered even more violently. At this moment, even if Ling Han struck him dead where he stood, it was guaranteed that no one would dare utter a single word of objection. In this whole world and era, the only people who could exert any measure of control over Ling Han would be the other 2 heaven-grade alchemists. However, they were both in the Middle State, far too distant to be able to help. Pa! Tang Zuming dropped to his knees and sobbed. Please spare me, Grandmaster Ling. I beg you to spare me, Grandmaster Ling. After tossing and turning in panic, he could only repeat this phrase. He was truly so terrified that he was completely out of his wits. Ling Han rushed forward and immediately gave him a thrashing. This also meant that he had no intention of committing murder. Otherwise, why would he go to such trouble? If he truly wished to kill Tang Zuming, he needed only wave his sword, and it would be done. However, this was possibly a descendant of his disciple, so he decided to educate him properly. Everyone else was struck dumb. Who would have imagined that a noble, prestigious heaven-grade alchemist would actually be so violent? He had actually gone ahead and thrashed Tang Zuming openly in public. Then, what difference was there between his actions and those of a common thug? The imposing image that Ling Han had just established collapsed instantly. Of course, his deterrent force as a heaven-grade alchemist did not lessen in the slightest. He was still an existence they could only gaze up at in admiration and reverence. When he was finally satisfied with his thrashing, Ling Han stopped and declared, "The 9-leaf black Ganoderma, hand it over!" Tang Zuming was stunned at first. Then he realized that he was still alive. And he was no idiot. He had merely been scared stupid just now. Now that he thought about it, since Ling Han was willing to beat him up, that meant Ling Han did not intend to kill him. He could not help but feel a great joy at gaining a new lease on life. He quickly took out the 9-leaf black Ganoderma from his spatial ring and handed it to Ling Han. He then said, "I'm sorry, Grandmaster Ling, because this is a necessary ingredient in one of the alchemical pills that my great-grandfather is in the midst of concocting. I had bought it over." "Hang, it's not rare for you to use your great-grandfather's name, is it?" Ling Han asked coldly. Tang Zuming's heart shook. He could hear the displeasure in Ling Han's voice and hurriedly assured, "I will definitely change my habits. I won't do it again." Ling Han humphed and extended a finger, pressing it down on Tang Zuming's dantian. "Grandmaster Ling, what did you do to me?" Tang Zuming asked in haste. He did not feel anything odd happen within his body. Yet he absolutely did not believe Ling Han would tap him for no reason. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, "I just made you unable to be a man." "Ah!" Tang Zuming screeched shrilly. He was incredibly fond of womanly charms, so if he had lost his ability as a man, then what was left for him to live for? "No!" he cried in overwhelming grief. "No, I want to be a man! I want to be a man!" "Shut up!" Ling Han gave him a slap. "It would not be difficult for you to return to being a man, but that will depend on your future performance." Tang Zuming nodded his head repeatedly like pounding a stalk of scallion and said, "I will definitely perform well. I will definitely perform very well." Ling Han nodded and said, "Then we'll see." Tang Zuming could not help but feel disappointed. He naturally hoped to immediately regain his ability as a man, but could he actually force Ling Han to release the restriction on him? He wanted to weep, but had no tears. If he had known this would happen, he should have fled back to the Middle State 2 days ago. He would not have clashed with Ling Han either. Who would have thought that Ling Han would actually put up such an elaborate pretense? He obviously possessed the genuine skill of heaven grade, yet he humbly remained in the position of an earth grade low-level alchemist, causing him to kick such an enormous iron sheet. He was now feeling so horribly wronged. However, at this moment, he did not dare make the slightest complaint. The only thing he could do now was stand seriously and obediently. Since Ling Han obtained the 9-leaf black Ganoderma, he was naturally in a very good mood. He said, "I'm leaving." Then he turned, planning to walk out of the North Pill Pavilion. "Grandmaster Ling!" Innumerable alchemists crowded around him. Gods, they had never even seen a heaven-grade alchemist, so naturally they had to admire him for a little longer. Meanwhile, Elder Shi and Zhuo Gao Feng were both kneeling before Ling Han, asking for pardon respectively. "Grandmaster Ling, please forgive our previous lack in manners." Neither of them placed any importance on pride or reputation, and directly began to slap themselves severely. There was nothing else they could do. This was a heaven-grade alchemist. In the whole world, there were only 3, and their status was on par with ultimate elites of the Shattering Void tier. Who would dare offend such an existence? Ling Han was irritated and said, "Don't follow me. I still have things to do." As for you two, head to my restaurant and work for a month. If you perform well, I will forget what has happened a few days ago. If you do not, hee. We will definitely perform well. Elder Shi and Zhuo Gaofeng declared simultaneously, their expressions filled with pleasant surprise.